Man, I think we had a little bit of too many turnovers. They definitely slowed the pace down, and at the end of the day, we got to play what works for us. We got to keep our pace high. We got to play our defensive schemes, take care of business on the defensive end, get boards, and run. That's what we're good at. We have great people who are awesome in the open court, and so I just think we lacked pace tonight, honestly.
Kaylee, can you take me through that second quarter play with Stokes that made you upset, and then you hopped into the back?
That hurts. Like, the ref can't miss that, and then I have to play with a contusion in my leg the rest of the game. It's ridiculous.
Tension crackling through the tunnel like static electricity. One of the most intense quarters in Indiana Fever history has just concluded. However, things were not quite as coordinated in the dressing room. With her jaw tight and her eyes like daggers, Caitlin Clark charged toward the bench. With her clipboard in hand, Coach Stephanie White trailed closely behind and attempted to provide instructions above the din of the crowd. Then it took place. The enthusiasm was evident even if the cameras were unable to capture the words. Clearly irritated, Clark whirled around in mid-step and confronted Fairley squarely. Even the assistant coaches froze in place as she shook her head, gestured to the court, and snapped something. It was not dramatic. It was genuine. This was not a showy collapse by a diva. This was a top-tier rival who demanded leadership, independence, and transparency. You can immediately see that Clark is not someone who sugarcoats things if you follow her career, from the crowded college venues in Iowa to the record-breaking WNBA audiences. She plays with the zeal of someone attempting to change the rules in real time, and she is outspoken and straightforward. This was different, however, at this particular time. It was more significant than a single poor quarter or a skipped rotation. It concerned the Fever's future and if the brand would allow Caitlin Clark to be herself. To be honest, Clark did not join the WNBA to be a supporting cast member. She did not light up college basketball for 4 years just to be ignored or instructed to slow down so someone else could dribble the time down. Fans are paying to see her because of her style, which includes rapid threes, no-look passes, and speedy breaks that begin with the rebound. However, she has been treading carefully ever since arriving in Indiana. On the one hand, you have the traditional way of thinking, low-scoring slugfests, grinded-out possessions, and constructed setups designed to help veterans who have been in the league for 10 years. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 83% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great. Thank you so much for your support. Now back to the...
A little bit more burst, especially down the stretch in the fourth, but hopefully I don't have to keep playing 25 minutes.
She is here to maintain control, discipline, and run plays through the veterans. Conversely, up-tempo, chaos, speed, space offense, and creative freedom are all part of Clark's vision for the game. She is revolutionary rather than careless, and she was screaming enough with her snap at halftime. One might say that it has been developing for some weeks. The miscuts, the delayed rotations, the plays in which Kelsey Mitchell dribbled into a contested mid-range shot as Clark was completely frozen out. Clark's annoyance went beyond his feelings. It was tactical. The system is holding her back like sandbags on a rocket ship as she reads the floor 3 steps ahead. Everything had changed at the beginning of the third quarter. With a completely new attitude and fury in her eyes, Clark emerged. It was as if she were flipping a switch. She made 3 deep threes in less than 5 minutes, transitioning from playmaker to assassin. Coach White remained mute as the audience went nuclear and sat on the bench. It was obvious. The team has improved since Clark took command. The ball started to move all of a sudden. Colleagues were purposefully screening and cutting more forcefully, opening up. At last, Natasha Howard, who had been stiff-arming the offense, began to flow with Clark's pace. Perhaps sensing the change, Kelsey Mitchell offered Clark a transition assist instead of pushing shots. As a consequence, the squad seemed to be a postseason contender rather than a mid-tier jumble after a 30-point quarter. Naturally, the press conference after the game was a maze. Coach White provided a typical response. We changed things. Without acknowledging what had obviously happened on national television, the team said, well, it was a terrific second-half effort. No mention of the altercation. She did not dance around it, however. Clark. With calm gaze, she added, we are trying to create something here. And sometimes it means having difficult talks because we want to prevail. My goal is to prevail. Interpretation, I am not here to be polite. I am here to take the lead. And you know what? She is not incorrect. The Fever must give her the keys and move aside if they want to prevail. She is more than simply their top scorer. She is their finest communicator, floor general, passer, and ultimately, their best opportunity to develop a contemporary identity. The WNBA is changing. Speed, space, and star power are taking the place of the traditional techniques. Clark is everything and more. That change will not be simple, however. Veterans who believe they have paid more dues are still present in that locker room. There are still coaches who think that safety comes from organization. There are still many in the media who believe Clark's self-assurance is conceit. Here's the thing, however. Dynasties are not built on indecision. Vision, bravery, and allowing your finest players to mold the culture are the foundation upon which you develop them. And what is at stake here is culture. Play calls and stat lines are not the only things involved. The question is whether the Indiana Fever are prepared to become the club that rides with Caitlin Clark into the future, or whether they want to remain a team mired in mediocrity, a combination of old-fashioned tactics and experienced egos. The fans have decided what they want. The arena calls out her name. The merchandise is flying off the shelves. Every time the ball is in her hands, ESPN switches to her responses. She is a revolution, not simply a novice. Every revolution begins with a moment similar to the halftime explosion, when the star finally expresses what everyone has been thinking aloud. It is enough. I will run it. What transpired at halftime was only a spark. However, a far larger issue is now gaining traction. There is a simmering issue in Indiana and around the league. To be clear, Caitlin Clark was not only speaking for herself when she yelled at her coach. She was speaking on behalf of all athletes who have ever been prevented from reaching their full potential by a system that is too inflexible. For every novice who is expected to follow orders rather than take initiative, and for every star who is instructed to follow orders rather than take the lead. There is more going on here than simply a power battle. Women's basketball is in the early phases of a cultural war between tradition and change. Stephanie White is an example of a generation of coaches that used a one-size-fits-all playbook, discipline, and repetition to build their methods. To be fair, that strategy was successful in the early 2000s. When a league was battling for consistency and exposure, it worked. In the past, minimizing errors seemed to be the way to get trust, but the 2025 WNBA is a different story. Fans demand more than simply effectiveness. They are looking for flair. Stars are what they want. They want 30-foot daggers that light up Twitter in real time, as well as speed and attitude. They want to experience emotion once again. And Caitlin Clark consistently evokes that emotion. She is not a flawless athlete. She is not perfect. Even ardent admirers hold their breath as she takes heat-check shots. You know what else she does, though? As soon as the ball comes into contact with her hands, she applies pressure on defenses. Before they arrive, she sees passes. She improves performance for opponents, teammates, and the league at large. And that is why this coaching conflict is so important. It has nothing to do with disrespect. It has to do with alignment. Caitlin Clark is now performing like a generational star confined to a role-playing framework. Additionally, it is evident in the game's rhythm as well as in the body language. The attack falters and the pace slows. Another possession dies in a corner, leaving Clark standing with his hands up. Furthermore, this is not just one game, unlike what you would believe. There is a trend here. The gap between a visionary and an organization that is too cautious to keep up is slowly growing. Let us now discuss the locker room since, as the video transcript makes evident, not everyone is prepared for the Clark age. This squad has players, particularly veterans, who believe they should have the authority to make decisions. For years, Kelsey Mitchell, for instance, has been the face of the Fever. Additionally, the tension in her play is evident. The ISOs, the incorrect passes, and the inability to change Clark's pace. It is generational rather than personal. Furthermore, this is not an issue exclusive to Indiana. Every time a young star joins a team with a large number of veterans, this occurs. Ego, pride, and the fear of being surpassed or replaced are all present. Here's the unsettling reality, however. The Fever must put vision ahead of comfort if they are to prevail. And Clark is the vision at the moment. Adapting is necessary. When she asks for the ball, she must pass. This calls for coaching rather than restraining her. It entails focusing the system on her strengths rather than pushing her to change who she is in order to conform to someone else's. Additionally, a front office must cease playing both sides. Indiana is now in the middle. Attempt to capitalize on the excitement Clark creates while simultaneously appeasing its veterans. However, that is unsustainable. If you do not invest in this generational potential, you run the danger of seeing her go after her rookie contract expires. Not to mention that Clark has choices. She is already well known around the world. She might leave Indiana and continue to dominate sponsorships, merchandising, and headlines. However, if she remains, it must be because this squad was created with her in mind, not the other way around. Let us also discuss how the altercation at halftime affected the league as a whole. That video went viral as soon as it appeared on social media. Podcasts, TikTok edits, and debate programs all provide various stories. Some see Clark as an unappreciative novice who defies authority. Some referred to her as a breath of fresh air since she at last demanded responsibility and guidance. She did, however, shift the needle once more, something no one could dispute. This is when things start to get interesting, because that type of cultural weight entails both opportunity and responsibility. Clark is doing more than simply creating the character of her squad. She is changing the discourse around the coaching, coverage, and consumption of women's basketball. She is demonstrating that WNBA stars are capable of having ambitions, disagreements, and ideas, and that it is leadership rather than diva behavior. Consider how we report on NBA players. When Luka Doncic shouts at Jason Kidd, we do not flinch. We acknowledge that disagreement as a necessary component of fierce competitiveness. However, it makes news when Caitlin Clark follows suit. It is a scandal. It is disrespect. Clark is confronting the loud double standard. However, there will undoubtedly be opposition to that challenge. From coaches who see a challenge to their authority. From pundits who anticipate rookies will be thankful and quiet. From admirers who want her to stick to her own path. In actuality, however, she lacks a lane. She is constructing a roadway. The Fever are at last playing better basketball after the altercation, which is the most ironic aspect. The offense has become more relaxed. The speed has accelerated. Players are genuinely moving without the ball, and the team scores goals more effectively. It resembles a surprise. Your team is better when you have faith in your generational point guard. This is what will happen next. The Indiana Fever must have some difficult talks if they are serious about winning games, not simply tickets and clicks. They must determine if Stephanie White is the best coach for this team's future. They must choose whether veterans who refuse to change should be a part of this core. Additionally, because nobody succeeds in limbo, they must provide Caitlin Clark with both freedom and assistance. Either you become the team that had her and let her go, or you empower your star. Because of Caitlin Clark's outburst at her coach, let us discuss the ripple effect. That was more than a Fever issue. The whole league received the televised notice. Coaches and general managers in WNBA locker rooms had to sit up and ask themselves one straightforward question. Will we be the next? Because when a player with Clark's prominence, stats, and brand equity seizes that kind of narrative control, it alters the gravity of the league. She is not only having fun. She is redefining the hierarchy of power. This is not simply about basketball, let us be clear. It has to do with branding, media, and attention economics. Every time Caitlin Clark enters a new city, jerseys sell out and ticket prices soar. Suddenly, local news outlets that have not covered the WNBA in 10 years send cameras. She is the first athlete to move markets, not just basketballs, in years. Because the league and sponsors listen to her when she speaks, whether at a news conference or yes, at a contentious halftime moment, she has some influence outside of the court. Take a look at the current packaging for the Fever games. They are receiving coverage at prime time. Suddenly, ESPN panelists include the WNBA in their rundown. It is because Caitlin Clark's presence makes it difficult to ignore, not because someone finally realized how good the league is. Let us also discuss brand agreements. Do you really believe that a rookie's proficiency with threes is the only reason Nike dropped a special shoe for her? No. Because Clark adds conflict and narrative identity, they decided not to forward with the transaction. Marketers are passionate about three things. The explosion at halftime. Her brand was unaffected. It constructed it. It demonstrated that she is not only here to photograph and smile. Her goal is to prevail. And you may sell that plot. However, this also puts the Fever organization at more risk. You now have a player that improves not only your box score, but also the overall financial impact of your team. Not only are you failing her if you're not making the most of it, but you are also failing your partners, investors, and fans if you are using out-of-date settings that limit her potential. Speaking of fans, let us talk about the new audience that Clark is attracting. She is attracting casuals as well as diehards. College fans who have never seen a WNBA game are drawn to her. She is attracting those who are more interested in statistics and vibes. This league has always deserved greater attention, therefore it is not a terrible thing. And whether they want it or not, Clark is pulling them in. However, fresh eyes also bring with them new expectations. People anticipate fast-paced drama, emotive players, highlight plays, and motion offenses. They do not want to see 30-second shot clock grinds that result in forced jumpers or 17 consecutive post-ups. They want speed. They are looking for flair. Additionally, they seek to empower their celebrity. For this reason, the Fever's current strategy seems out of step. You have a league that is at last gaining attention, and a group that consistently turns down the lights. That has to change. Other players are watching what Caitlin Clark just accomplished in Indiana, so let us pan out. Second-year forwards trapped behind veterans who are unable to pass, and young guards on rebuilding teams. They are observing Clark's voice use and the reactions of her franchise. There will be a new wave of player empowerment if the Fever backer, the offense, and the coaching are all changed. Other stars will begin to make system demands because they know they can, not because they are conceited. Clark simply shown that it is feasible. However, the Fever will create a risky precedent if they disregard her and bury her skill in poor spacing and antiquated play calling. It would be a huge lost opportunity for the NBA if it told other rookies to keep quiet, remain little. Because this is the reality. It is not true that Caitlin Clark is a unicorn. She is the first of many. There is a complete pipeline. There is a wave coming, Guju Watkins, Paige Beckers, and Hannah Hidalgo. Furthermore, these ladies will not pretend to be kind in order to get favor. They grew up seeing LeBron make the decisions in Los Angeles. They have seen Steph Curry revamp an offensive scheme. It is not the other way around that they comprehend star-shaped structures. And the WNBA must decide. Either change with them or you run the danger of losing them. Not just in video games, but also in society. Now let us discuss Coach Stephanie White once more. To analyze, not to criticize. She is a good coach. She is a first-season character. However, it may sometimes be the issue. Decades-old coaches often depend on what worked in the past. When they watch fast-paced basketball, they imagine mayhem. They think without discipline and perceive logo threes. They perceive insubordination when they see athletes barking during huddles. However, the development of leadership is what they are lacking. Ego had nothing to do with Clark's halftime tantrum. It has to do with urgency. It was about saying, if you allow us, we can win. Leadership is that. Yes, messy. Yes, it is emotional, but it is genuine. And they will continue to lose the locker room one star at a time if White or any coach is unable to accept that fact. This is something that has not received enough attention. It is possible that Clark's encounter prevented a Fever season. In some cases, things must break before they may be repaired. Sometimes it is necessary to pronounce the silent portion aloud. That is what Clark did. Everyone was already experiencing strain, which she revealed. And now that the organization has no more justifications, there is a way forward. They have seen the results of leaning into Clark's style. 99 points are yours. It gives you space. You experience fluidity. You achieve outcomes. What will they do with that information, then? Put it under the rug. May eventually create a system that gives her complete control. Whatever decision they make will determine this franchise's future for the next 3 years. Here's the worst part. Perhaps it will not be during a game the next time Clark loses it. Stars do not wait forever, therefore it might happen during the off-season, during a contract meeting, or during a trade demand. Not in the game today. Not when they are aware of their value. Not with everyone looking on. Sitting courtside is where you are. It is an electrifying audience. The cameras are in motion. And then, as halftime approaches, bang. There is a surge of tension. It goes beyond simple disagreement. It is more than a simple misunderstanding. It is a confrontation. The face of the emerging WNBA, Caitlin Clark, is yelling at head coach Stephanie White. And everyone in the league is observing. It did not seem like a unique moment. It seems to be the result of weeks or even months of increasing strain, missed potential, and an attitude that is so incongruous that they may just as well be participating in 2 other sports. This is not only about one game, let us face it. Identity is at issue here. Who is in charge of the Indiana Fever? The phenomenon rewriting the rules, or the old guard sticking to structure. Whispers are evolving into candid discussions behind the scenes. According to league sources, Clark has made many attempts to speak out at team meetings. She has used quicker tempo sets. She has provided input on player spacing and rotation. She has pointed out the obvious inefficiencies in the team's transition response and, for the most part, silence. According to sources, the irritation peaked when Coach White benched Clark for a crucial possession in the fourth quarter of a tight game. It was supposedly for relaxation. However, when her side struggled on offense once again, spectators saw Clark clenching her jaw, crossing her arms, and avoiding eye contact. Is this the start of a full-fledged revolt? You cannot help but wonder. This is where it becomes even more juicy. The idea that Clark is not alone is becoming more and more apparent. Younger athletes, rookies, and second-year students who grew up seeing her dominance at Iowa are subtly supporting her goals. They want more ball movement, less ISO play, a quicker offense, and more faith in analytics-driven contemporary basketball. According to reports, one assistant coach confided in a coworker, "We are attempting to drive our 21st century Ferrari like a Buick from the 1990s. It is not a criticism of Stephanie White. Although she is a reputable basketball expert, there is no denying the disparity in style. The Fever's speed puts them close to the bottom of the league. When you let Clark take over, you go offensive." The figures seem to be shouting what Clark is too irritated to express out. The dynamics in the locker room, however, are chilly. In one instance, Clark confronted a colleague after missing another transition chance. According to reports, the teammate retaliated. "On our team, you are not alone." The vibe changed. The eyes darted. The room was tense. That was a pivotal moment. There was a silent division between those who stubbornly held onto their seniority and those who welcomed Clark as a future. A 99-point offensive outburst against the Dallas Wings with silent detractors is what you would expect. However, no. Analysts referred to it as a fluke. Clark's stat inflated, according to others. Watch the clip, however. When she sets the pace, it is indisputable. In addition to looking like a playoff club, the Fever seem to be enjoying themselves. With rookies like Victoria Saxton and Lexi Hull, the chemistry has grown. Fast judgments, unrelenting tempo, and off-ball movement. It is the kind of basketball that floods highlight reels and fills stadiums. And it is strategy, not simply bluster. The scenario is exactly the same off the court. Although Clark's camp has maintained its professionalism, nervousness is rising in private. They are not requesting preferential treatment. Common sense is what they are requesting. A generational point guard is the foundation of the system, not because of one. The notion of a coaching change has begun to circulate among some media outlets. Would the front desk really take that into consideration? Would they have the courage? Stephanie White is still receiving support from the Fever in public, but pressure is building behind closed doors. There is an increase in attendance. The merchandise is flying. At last, the squad is receiving national notice. Do they maintain the momentum or allow internal opposition to cause it to stall? Additionally, there is a fan base that is more active, vociferous, and divided than before. Loud and devoted are Clark supporters. They contend that she is more than simply the Fever's face. She is the league's future. They are not incorrect. Every time she takes the court, TV ratings rise. Like no one since Sue Bird or Diana Taurasi, she has brought the WNBA into the mainstream. However, her detractors claim that she is very demanding, that she ought to wait her time, and that she must prove herself before taking on a coach on national television. Let us be honest. That critique smells like dread. Aversion to change. Aversion to the novel. Concern that the weight of unquestionable star power is causing the previous structure, which was based on tenure and status quo, to crumble. In such discussions, Paige Becker's name keeps coming up. Despite her calm efficiency, quiet strength, and coachability, Clark did not just outscore her when they faced off. She was in charge of the game. Becker's is amazing. However, Clark is transformative. However, their rivalry is still in its early stages. Becker's post-game interview was calm and collected, but it also had a hint of edge. She responded, "They got us today. However, we will meet them once again." There was a simmering resolve that promises fire the next time, but no hostility. And fans, oh, they are prepared. Becker's versus Clark could end up being the league's most iconic rivalry, based on intelligence rather than stake. Real-time writing of two distinct legacies and two distinct archetypes. Now, back in Indiana, the Fever front office must make a crucial decision. Support their coach and run the risk of upsetting the athlete who is making them famous, or reorganize the system to provide Clark with the assistance, autonomy, and contemporary framework she needs to succeed. They are unable to accomplish both. The barrier is vanishing. Half measures are no longer appropriate. In actuality, this breakdown was more than simply an emotional outpouring. In the sand, there was a line. Caitlin Clark is weary of making concessions. I am sick of waiting around. I am sick of being polite only to control my ego. Her desires are straightforward. To prevail. To take the lead. To carry out her routine. Modify the game. Perhaps, just perhaps, this explosion served as the team's catalyst. Because sometimes burning away the dead weight requires a little amount of fire. One thing is certain, Caitlin Clark is tired of waiting, regardless of what occurs next. Whether White adjusts or leaves or Clark must endure another season of philosophical mismatch. With the WNBA, things become much more intriguing.